I'm your host, Kristen of Maybe Peruana Designs, and I am here to talk to you about what else? Knitting. I will also be talking about knitting pattern design, goings on in the fiber arts community, and as usual, may or may not mention Diego Luna for no reason at all. So thank you so much for joining me today. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons who help support the podcast. So if you don't know me already, my name is Kristen Janik. I'm a knitting pattern designer, knitting instructor. I am also the mom to 2 young boys and wife to a very tall man from Peru. We live in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C., and when I am not knitting, I'm usually doing yoga, watching Orioles baseball, drinking wine, but it is mostly about the knitting. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we have reached the month of October. October is my favorite month of the year. When I was younger, that was probably because my birthday's in October. Now that I'm getting older, that holds less value to me, but lots of other wonderful things happen in October, particularly in this part of the world where the fall weather starts kind of kicking in, the leaves start changing, we have Halloween, my husband and I celebrate our anniversary, everything pumpkin is available, so this is a great time of year as far as I am concerned. Normally, 2020 October, my hopes aren't quite as high for a great month, but we will still see what happens. I have to celebrate a big birthday this year. Not particularly looking forward to that, especially because, of course, we can't do any kind of big celebration. What we have planned right now is to have a few friends and family over and stay outside. We do have outdoor space, and to do some finger foods and s'mores and some drinks and all of that while we maintain a safe distance and remain outdoors except for bathroom use. This kind of depends on a few factors, most notably the weather. If it rains, we're just kind of out of luck. So it is what it is. I also still don't know what we're doing for Halloween. My kids are 6 and 7, so still very into Halloween and still, not really being able to grasp why it's not safe to go trick-or-treating. Just because we don't know what other people are doing. We know we have been safe, but we don't know about other people. I was talking to a friend today, and they're just kind of tossing around some ideas. I still don't know what's going to happen. I definitely will still let my kids dress up. And so Halloween is on a Saturday, so we sort of have the whole day to do kind of fun Halloween things. Maybe watch movies and, make popcorn balls or something like that. I do think the pumpkin patch will probably be okay as long as we all have our masks. Obviously, it's a pumpkin patch, so it's outdoors. I've not really looked into it yet, though, so I'm not sure what their guidelines are going to be. But I think, assuming they are keeping things distant there and it's, outdoors, hopefully we can still do that. We also have our wedding anniversary, which of course we can't do anything for, but it'll be next year that it's 10 years, and so hopefully by then we will be able to do something. I already told my husband I want to take a big trip since this year has been such a bust, but we'll have to wait and see. But still, it's my favorite month of the year, and I'm trying to focus on that and do my favorite activities. The kids were very excited to put up our Halloween decorations yesterday. I still haven't had a pumpkin spice latte. I just haven't been able to get out. the weather is cooling down here, but we had a few days last week that were a bit warmer, and it just did not feel like pumpkin spice weather. So I will definitely put that on my list. We have had plenty of delicious pumpkin beer. And tonight I'm going to try my beloved hot buttered rum apple cider, which is basically, maybe I'll do the recipe on another episode of the podcast. But you basically mix up this sort of brown sugar, butter, cinnamon concoction, which you can save, and put a teaspoon or two in your mug, top it off with the hot cider, and then add some brown rum or spiced rum preferably, and it is delicious. And I have, a couple of things I want to talk about today, but I also don't want this to be a super long episode, so I will not be too chatty this time. I will cut off Chatterbox here. I do want to note that I have a longer segment today where I'm going to show you guys how I make sourdough bread. I'm going to put that all the way at the end though, so you can just skip it if you're not interested, but I do have that segment today. But other than that, I've got lots of knitting to show you, so let's move on to that part. I do have a pattern drop in this episode. The long-awaited beautiful green pullover has been published. So my new pattern is called 6 Crooked Highways. I will go ahead and pop some of the fancy photos in here. And now I can just go ahead and show you the finished project. This is the pullover I have been working on for several months. And I really do love it, but I will admit that the stitch pattern can get a little tedious after a while. So I definitely slowed down towards the end, especially on the sleeves. But it is finally done, and I am really happy with the way it turned out. So as you can see, it has my hair on it. No, it is all over these little slip stitch cables. So all over the body, all over the sleeves, finished off with a little folded over kind of turtleneck. And then it begins at the bottom hem. It's a rolled hem with a twisted rib, worked at a bit of a loose gauge. So it has a little bit of airiness in there. This is a drop shoulder, so the body is basically worked all the way up to the shoulders with no shaping. So you just knit straight up to the armholes and then just start knitting flat to create the armholes. The pattern includes 10 sizes. It is size inclusive. I want to say the largest bust size is 67 inches, I believe. The recommended ease is 4 to 6 inches. And this is the size, I think it came out 39 and a half. I think the goal was 40, and I think the actual size was 39 and a half. So in the photos, I'm wearing it with about 4, maybe 5 inches of positive ease. So this pattern is worked in Biche et Mouche, Le Petit Lamb's Wool. It was a little, it seemed a little thin when I was working with it and not super soft, but once it is washed, it really blooms nicely, and it's definitely not merino, but it is plenty soft. I would still probably I pretty much always wear something under my sweaters, just because I think you can wear your sweaters more often between washes if you have kind of a layer right next to the skin to absorb all the sweat and gunk and stuff, so that doesn't get on your sweater itself. So this pattern is now available on Ravelry, Love Knitting, and PayHip. Only on Ravelry and PayHip can I offer a coupon code. So you can use the coupon code Dylan to save $1 on the pattern. That's DYLAN. And I will, of course, put that in the information box below and in the show notes so that you can kind of keep track of that. And I will, of course, link to the pattern as well. So the regular pattern price is $8 and you can save $1 with that coupon code. This is my first of 3 sweaters for sort of fall winter season of 2020. I'm very happy with the way it has turned out. It is not quite cool enough for this kind of sweater yet. I will tell you about the sweater I'm wearing a little bit later. But since this one is this kind of lofty, it is fingering weight, but it's this really lofty warm wool, kind of that rustic style woolen spun that has holds lots of air, and so it's warmer. It is a little bit heavy still. By the end of the month, I should be able to wear it. It was 80 degrees the day I took the pictures, of course. We've been having, days in the 60s and 70s, but the day I took the pictures, it was 80 degrees, obviously. But this is going to be a great, even though it's light, if you use this kind of rustic woolen spun wool, it's really going to keep you warm through the whole season. So that is the pattern drop I have for you in this episode. 6 Crooked Highways is now available. As almost always, I do have a stash flash for you. It seems like, 2 years since Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, but it was actually just 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks from the day I'm recording this. It feels like a lifetime. If you've been watching the podcast or you follow me on Instagram or any of those things, I think you're pretty aware of where I stand on most political issues and on the political spectrum. So obviously for many reasons, many of us were very upset by RBG's passing and everything that happened afterward. And like many of us, we sort of take some solace in our knitting. So I decided that I wanted to cast on a Descent pullover by Andrea. I'm not sure if it's Rangel or Rangel, or I'm not sure. I will pop a photo in here. And so, of course, now you can see how her name is spelled. Maybe you know better than I do how it's pronounced. So I decided I was going to cast that on. I haven't yet, but I did get the yarn. So the yarn I picked is Julie Adeline, whatever it may be, Nurtured Fine. So I used her regular nurtured yarn for my Diego cardigan that I published last year, and I loved it. It's a little bit rustic. It's got this really good hand. It's really nice and warm. The colors are amazing. It's got a little bit of this tonality to it. So I loved that. And as I was looking for a fingering weight yarn for this sweater, I believe the Nurtured Fine was listed on the pattern page as a good choice. It was used in one of the samples that looks beautiful, so I decided to go for that. So the Nurtured Fine is the fingering weight, and these colorways, let's see, this one is Antlers, and this one is, as I recall, something I'm not sure how to pronounce. Tisane. I'm not sure, Tisane. So this is like a very kind of purpley pink. And this, it looks really white here. If I pull it back a little bit, you can see these just kind of hints of some other colors popping through there, like some pale purples or pale blues. So I think this is going to be really beautiful. The Nurtured Fine is sold on cones. Let me see, it's 700 some yards, 780 yards on each cone for only like 30 some bucks. So it's not a bad deal for this kind of hand-dyed yarn. This is obviously my main color because I bought 2 of them. 1 cone wasn't going to quite be enough. 2 is a lot. And same for this. I think the pattern called for maybe 200, maybe 300 yards of the contrast color. But I went ahead and bought the cone. I was originally looking at some of her other fingering weight bases. It's $32 for 780 yards. So I was originally looking at some of her other fingering weight bases. I don't think she has that many, but one or two that were kind of a more standard 400 yards-ish. But this was just a little bit more expensive for nearly double the yards. And I decided, you know, I would have enough left of both that I could then do another smaller project with my leftovers. The magical day that I someday finish this sweater. So that is the yarn for my descent pullover. My goal was to swatch it this weekend. It is now 3:30 on Saturday. I have not even cast on a swatch yet, as you can see, but hopefully soon. I just have so much that I am trying to get done. So that is the yarn I have to show you in this episode. For Adelante, I have two secret projects I'm working on that I can't show you, but I can show you one upcoming design. Believe it or not, this is a sweater. If you are familiar with a saddle shoulder sweater, this will be much less confusing to you. So I am working on a new saddle shoulder pullover design. And so these two things are the saddles that go over the top of your shoulder like this. Then you pick up stitches on either side to create a yoke, work flat to the underarms, and then work in the round. So I have just barely gotten started. The yarn I am using is Little Fox yarn. Is it yarn or yarns? Little Fox yarn, Bosa. So this is a 2-color pullover. So here's the other color. So this is just a slightly green-gray. It's a blue, but it's sort of green-grayish. And then this really nice purple. So the Bosa is a really interesting base. It's a DK weight, 65% superwash merino, 20% silk, and 15% yak. So with the merino and the silk, it is really soft. With the yak, I don't know if you can see, it has just a little bit of fluff. And having the 3 different fibers in there, you can also see that the color is not quite solid, and it also has a really nice sheen from the silk. So this is a really beautiful DK weight base. I think this is newer for her. It's certainly the first time that I am working with it. And she did provide yarn support, so I want to say many thanks to Little Fox Yarn for this gorgeous, gorgeous yarn. What this is going to be is a lice stitch, which I hate saying because it sounds terrible. It basically is kind of like the knitting version of polka dots, but a lice stitch, all over lice stitch pullover with contrast trims and saddles as well. It's going to be a lot of work, which I already did. The Diego cardigan that I did last year is a saddle shoulder. So I'm familiar with the construction, and I already kind of have a pattern outline that I can follow to a certain degree. But what has to happen is that, like I said, you work from the saddle, so you build the back, you build the front, you join at the underarms. But I got this lice stitch. So what I need is this lice stitch to blend cleanly from here, incorporating neck shaping and short rows to drop the shoulders and underarm shaping to meet together on the 2 sides in the correct pattern. And I am really not sure how I'm going to make this happen. It is not a complicated stitch pattern at all, but for 10 different sizes to get them all to line up, it would have been a lot easier if this had been worked bottom up, but to my knowledge, there is not a way to make a bottom up saddle shoulder sweater. I don't know. Not my best idea maybe, but if I can get it to all work out, I think it's going to be great. So this is an upcoming design. I expect to publish it in late November, obviously, as it is now early October, and I am still working out the math and have barely started the sample. But I'm really looking forward to it, and this yarn is going to be so dreamy to wear. I am working on 2 secret projects. One I can't tell you anything about, but the other one I'm going to tell you about in just a minute in events. And now events. Normally this time of year, I am gearing up to do my usual annual Not Mystery knit along. If you haven't participated in one of these before, it is like a mystery knit along in that you will get clues every week, but it is a not mystery because I show you one version of the project ahead of time. And then as you receive the clues, each clue will have some different options. Maybe a different stitch pattern or something like that, so that everybody's comes out a little bit different. You never know exactly what it's going to look like at the end, because in each step along the way you're making a choice between at least 2 options. I also do a bunch of bonus tutorials and things to go along with it. So as you can maybe imagine, it's a little bit intensive because I will have to have my sample completely finished and then working from that, create these clues, adding different options, and then I usually knit a second sample while it's going on. So you see other options along the way, plus all the tutorials and things. So I just don't have the energy for it this year. As I already said, I'm kind of winding things down. I'm retiring from design at the end of the year. I am really overwhelmed with the distance learning with the kids. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. So this year I'm going a little bit more low-key, and I'm just going to do a normal mystery knit along. So since it is October, this is going to be a Socktober mystery knit along, or Socktober as I am calling it, which is sort of a mashup of English and Spanish. And it's going to be starting on October 9th. The deal is we're going to be making 2-color shorty socks, same as a regular mystery knit along. You're going to get a clue every week. And at the end, you have this new, fun, cute pair of socks, hopefully, with a little bit of mystery along the way regarding exactly how the stitch patterns are going to work up. There's a toe-up sock. You don't necessarily have to know how to knit socks to participate. It's probably a good idea. But knitting socks is the same as anything else. It's just knitting and purling. So adventurous beginner and beyond is welcome to join us. After the mystery knit along, I'll release the pattern as a regular pattern. It'll be $6. If you sign up for the mystery knit along ahead of time, you get it for $3. So it is available in both my Ravelry and Payhip shops, which I will link to in the information box below and show notes. You just sort of buy the pattern. You're not really getting the pattern now. What you're going to get is a welcome sheet that tells you how to access the clues when the mystery knit along starts, and hashtags to use and all of that good stuff. Materials, obviously. And because Ravelry is no longer accessible to, there's a giant wasp. Gross. Sorry. And because Ravelry is no longer accessible to everybody, we're mostly going to be doing our interaction on Instagram. In order to be entered for the grand prize, which I'm still working on, but it's probably going to be yarn, you will post a photo on Instagram with a specific hashtag, or you can, if you're still using Ravelry and prefer that, you can create your project page with the photo. That's fine too, but that's not going to be a requirement because we can't expect people to use Ravelry when Ravelry is causing so many health problems. So that is the deal. As I said, I will include the links in the information box below and in the show notes, but I hope you will join us for a mystery sock knit along. Get cute. I will show you the yarn. I'll do that. I'll show you the yarn that I am using for my sample. So you need 2 contrasting shades of yarn, and I just went stash diving, and I've got this, which is a beautiful blue with a few little speckles. This is also from Little Fox yarn, and this, which is one of my gorgeous club colors from Fiber for the People. I believe she has this as a regular colorway in her lineup now, and it's called Ironsides. So you can see these orange, grays, browns, rusty colors in here that I love. So you do want them to be pretty contrasting. These have a bit of overlap in that kind of blue-gray, but overall they're contrasting enough for this project. It's shorty socks, so you do not need 2 full skeins of yarn. You can probably use leftovers. If you really wanted to get creative, you could probably use mini skeins. You could use 1 main color and mini skeins in between. You know, you can really be creative, but you do need at least 2 colors of your sock yarn. And we're going to be starting on Friday, October 9th. So grab the quote-unquote pattern and join us for a little Socktober mystery knit along. All right, I am starting already to lose the light because I kind of forgot that it's October now and it gets lighter earlier. So I want to quickly go ahead into sweater weather and show you what I'm wearing in this episode. This is my lace hem tee. This is a test knit that I did for Karina Spencer late last year. I remember wearing this at Christmas time. So this is a fingering weight. You can see it's cropped. She also has a short sleeve version, which I am definitely going to knit at some point. It's a drop shoulder, big V-neck in the front, kind of a slight scoop neck in the back. So it's reversible. You can wear it the other way with the V in the back, which I also do sometimes. And it has thumb holes. That is always my favorite thing. My yarn is a little pilly. I should have, what's it called? Gleanered. I should have used my gleaner. I haven't. I just pulled this out of the storage boxes. The main yarn here is Manos del Uruguay Fino, which is a silk and merino single ply. That's why it's all fuzzy. Fingering weight. This is also the yarn in a slightly different color that I bought for my someday. What's it called? It's on my Make 9. Don't know. It's someone with like the sheer V. There we go. The sheer V sweater. That's what it is. I also bought this yarn for that. So this is a really cute project. The contrast color is just some leftovers I had. It's got this just cute, simple lace at the hem, the contrast trim which I like. I believe the Fino is the yarn called for in the pattern. This is one of the rare times that I actually use the yarn called for in the pattern. It is cropped, so I always wear, obviously, a camisole under it. Frankly, this is only like an inch above my waistline because I'm very short-waisted. For other people, it's probably more cropped. I have also worn this over jumpsuits, which looks really cute, I think, as well. So, Lace Hem Tee by Karina Spencer. I love this pattern. Definitely go check it out. All right, and that is all I have for you in this episode. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 27. You can find show notes with links to everything that I've talked about at mediaperuana.com/Hilo and Stitch. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons who support the podcast. If you are interested in supporting the podcast and getting special perks and freebies, patrons are able to participate in the Socktober Mystery Knit Along for free. That's one of them. You can find more information at patreon.com/mediaperuana. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope that you will subscribe to the channel, like, comment, share, all those things that help expand the reach of the podcast and of the Media Peruana Designs YouTube channel, which is also full of lots of free knitting tutorials. If you were looking for me on social media, you can find me on Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you next time. Okay guys, as a bonus, I'm going to be showing you in this episode how I make sourdough bread. So this is my sourdough starter. His name is Charlie. You can see the jar is about half full, and that means he needs to be fed. So the first thing I'm going to do before trying to make bread is to feed my starter so it's nice and active when I'm ready to get started. And that's my cat, Dory. Shh. So to feed, I'm going to dump out about half of this, and then I'm going to add more flour and water. Okay, so I've dumped out about half my starter. It seems a little bit wasteful. There are a lot of recipes. You can find a lot of them on Pinterest for what to do with the sourdough discard. I will sometimes make pizza dough with it, usually about once a week. And I also usually keep my starter in the refrigerator, so it only needs to be fed once a week. If you are leaving it out, so when I'm going to be baking frequently, I leave it out, then you need to feed it more often, about once a day. But if you keep it in the fridge, you only need to feed it about once a week. So I have dumped out about half, and we just had pizza yesterday, so I'm not making pizza dough today. It just went in the trash. And now I'm going to feed it. So I'm going to add about half a cup of regular all-purpose flour. And there are my children screaming. And a quarter cup of filtered water. Using the filtered water really helps things out. So I'm just going to stir everything up. Now Charlie has been fed. After you feed your starter, it will slowly grow and grow and grow until it collapses. And when you are going to bake bread, you want to try to catch it when it's right at about the peak of its growth before it collapses. So that is what I'm going to do. It is a little cool in here today. So I expect this to take, let's see, it's about 8:30. I expect this to take about 4 hours to reach its peak growth, and then we will continue. Okay, so we are ready to carry on with our bread making project. Got my bowl off to the side so it's not in the way here. Now, in order to do sourdough bread, or really any bread, it's best if you can weigh things. Now, of course, since I'm a knitter, I already have a scale for my yarn. You can get a digital scale for like 20 bucks on Amazon or at Target, and it is well worth the investment for both your knitting and your sourdough bread baking. Right, so what we really want to do is be careful to weigh all of our ingredients here. All right, so we're going to start with Charlie. And you can see he's right up to the top now, and he's nice and bubbly. There you go. So Charlie is ready to go. In fact, I am actively watching him bubble. So we're ready to make our bread. First, we will measure out the starter. Okay, so we need 150 grams of starter. And then after you measure out your starter, you're definitely going to want to feed him again. And then either, leave him out if you plan to bake frequently, or stick him or her back in the fridge. Okay. All right, now we got 150 grams of starter. In this case, that works out to be about a half a cup. And you can see that used, it's way down to here now, so that used almost all of that starter. So we'll put Charlie aside. And apologies if you can hear my children. All right. put Charlie in the bowl. You can see I'm using a really pretty big bowl. When I get a really good rise, it will rise almost to the top of this. So make sure you're using a big bowl. All right, now we're gonna go to our next ingredient. Okay, now we're ready for ingredient number 2, which is warm water, filtered water. So we have a filter in our kitchen. I just take water from there and warm it up in the microwave, not hot, but warm. If it's too hot, it will kill the bacteria that makes your sourdough what it is. All right, so measuring cup. We need 250 grams of warm water. All right, so that's about a cup and a teeny bit more, less than a cup and a quarter of the warm water. We'll add that next. Now I've got a little measuring doodad for the smaller ingredients. So we want 10 grams of salt, a little salt, kosher salt, not table salt, preferably. But if that's what you have, that's what you have. Some people think that salt can inhibit the rise. I have not seen a major problem with that. And if you try to add the salt at the, after the rise, it's really hard to get it to incorporate. Okay, we've got 10 grams of salt. Okay, we got our doodad again. For 25 grams of olive oil. There we go, okay. So I put all of those ingredients together first, and then after that, I do the flour. So, gotta whisk all of that together. Okay, so it just kind of looks like milky water, maybe a little yellow from the olive oil. Just add it together until it's nice and smooth, and then we'll start with the flour. It's really important to use bread flour. Do not use all-purpose flour. It will not turn out right. You can use all-purpose flour in your starter itself, but for your bread, make sure you're using bread flour. Okay, zero that out, and we want 500 grams of flour. And another 100, all right. All right, so now everything is mixed together. Now this is why, see now it's very messy, so it's probably wise to have separate scales for your yarn and your baking. All right, so now all my ingredients are in the bowl. I'm gonna start using a spoon to mix, and then when that becomes useless, I'm gonna go ahead and use my hands. So the first thing you're going to do is just kind of get it into the rough shape of a mass. It doesn't have to be a ball yet. Just get it so all the flour is incorporated. so here's what it looks like at first. Not a ball. You can also see that it takes up maybe a quarter of this bowl. And like I said, on a really good rise, this will rise all the way up to the top. So now what we're going to do is let it rest for about 30 minutes. We're going to put plastic wrap on top of it. And we're going to put it in a relatively warm space. Not hot. It's about 70 degrees in my house, so that's fine. I'm going to sit it on top of the oven or on top of the stove and let it rest. If your house is very, very cold, not necessarily for this step, but for the later rise steps, you can try putting your bowl in your oven with the oven light turned on. But like I said, it's about 70 degrees in here, so I'm just going to be able to let this sit for about 30-45 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, let's see how we're doing. So we just let it rest for about 30 minutes. And you can see at this point, it doesn't look much different. So after I've let it rest, I'm just going to form it into a ball. And then it's going to do a lot more resting. All right, so just kind of mush it together. Get all the edges that are kind of dry. Make sure they're smoothed out. We're going to form it into a ball. All right, now what we're going to do is drop it back into the bowl. And now it's got to rest for several hours. And by several, I mean 6 maybe, until it rises. What I'm going to do during that time, for the first 2 hours, every 30 minutes, I'm going to come and stretch the dough out a little bit. And I will obviously show you how I do that, but I'm going to do that 4 times, so every 30 minutes for about 2 hours. And then after that, it just sits for the rest of the rise. So we'll be back soon. Okay, here we go. This is our first dough stretch. Here is our dough for now. As I said, I'm going to do this every 30 minutes for 2 hours. So I'm going to do it 4 times. I'm only going to show you 1 time though. All right, so we reach into the bowl, we grab a hunk of dough, we stretch it out, and we fold it over. Turn the bowl and do it again. Okay. 3rd time, fold it over. Now my dough is moving around a little bit. And 4th time. Stretch, 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 and fold. Okay? So I'm gonna do that 4 times. Maybe a 5th. This part looks less stretchy. And that's it. I put the lid back on, or the plastic wrap. I come back in 30 minutes and do it again. And I do that 3 more times. Right after, this is an optional step. It makes the dough more flexible. It's not absolutely necessary. It seems to work well for me in getting my dough to rise well. But as I said, it is completely optional. You can also just let your dough sit. I'm going to keep doing my stretches. And then once those stretches are done, we just let the dough sit in a warm, sunny spot with some plastic wrap. You can also use a damp kitchen towel. I use the plastic wrap because I don't like having to keep coming back and hose down the kitchen towel. And you are just going to let your dough sit for as many hours as it takes to get a nice big rise. It should double in size. Just a quick update. So it's risen. It's maybe doubled in size, but it's supposed to be 2 times the size. So it's getting there. We've got a ways to go. Like I said, it's cool in my house today. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just put it in the oven with the oven light on to give a little extra heat. Okay, so here we are 9 hours after I started. And now my dough is ready. So you can see how much it has risen. It has about doubled in size. I've definitely had a higher rise before, but I'm not sitting here all night and it's already 9:30. You know, this has to bake for an hour. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull the dough out of the bowl and put it in this floured surface. The bits of dough out. All right, good. All right, and now I'm going to do one last stretch. So I've got it on the flour. You can see it's no longer a ball at all. So first I'm going to do that last stretch. Alright, so this has lots of nice stretch now. It's nice and airy. Alright, so after I do that, I'm actually going to take it off the floured surface and I'm going to put it over here where there's no flour. Because in order to shape the ball, which is the next step, I need it to kind of catch on the surface, which it won't do if it's in the flour. Alright, so now while I'm doing this, I have my breadstone in the oven and the oven preheating. So I'm going to preheat the oven to 425, and then right before I put the bread in, I'm going to lower the temperature to 400. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over seam side down, and now I'm going to shape it. And this is very helpful in getting a bread that looks like bread. All right, so you can see there are little kind of air bubbles on the surface of the dough. That's good. It's nice and light and airy, and I'm just going to keep kind of pulling it back like this until I get a nice round shape. And then I'm going to put it in this doohickey to do a final very, very brief rise. All right, so put it right in here. Again, you can see little air bubbles on the surface. That's good. And I'm going to leave it in here for 30-ish minutes. There's no exact number. You kind of want to keep an eye on it. So I'm going to leave it sitting here, and I want to wait until it looks just a little bit puffy. The proofing basket, I want to say this cost me 10, maybe 15 bucks on Amazon, and it's definitely worth it. It's going to help your dough keep its nice round shape, and it doesn't stick to the cloth, and that's really important. So prior to buying this, I was just letting it rise on my my peel, but it would end up getting misshapen. So this keeps it in a nice shape. They had two different sizes. I want to say this is the smaller size, so maybe the 9-inch proofing basket. Definitely worth it. We're going to sit and let this rise for, like I said, about 30 minutes until it looks, it's not going to get bigger really, but it's going to start to look puffy. And that is what we're looking for. All right, so we're ready to go. We're finally ready to bake our bread. You can see it's here. It looks just a little bit puffed. It still has a nice round shape. So I have my pizza peel, and I put cornmeal on top. The way that a friend described this to me is that the cornmeal acts like little ball bearings, so it helps the bread slide. So I'm gonna gently invert this into my hand. You can see it does not stick at all to the proofing basket. So, like I said, 10 or 15 bucks, definitely worth it. Now I'm going to score the top of the bread a little bit. I always try to be artistic, but then once it's baked, it never works out for me. I'm not sure why. So I'll still try. A big cut in the middle, and then some little kind of leafy shapes. This is not a great score. This came with the proofing basket for free. So it is definitely not top of the line or anything. All right, so now the bread is ready. I'm gonna lower the oven temperature to 400. You can see a little bit the design. Now, the recipe that I follow calls for cooking the bread inside a Dutch oven. I don't own a Dutch oven. And so what I do is cook the bread on my breadstone in the oven. So you put the breadstone in and you preheat the oven with it in there so it's already hot. And then I do a little trick that I learned from probably about 8-10 years ago when I was doing that really popular artisan bread in 5 minutes a day, which is that I will take about 2 cups of hot water and pour it into a sheet pan that I also have been preheating in the oven, and so it creates some steam. I don't know if it really helps, but I may as well try, right? All right, so let's see what happens. All right, so you can see there's my breadstone with the sheet pan in the oven. Here are my terrible builder's oak cabinets. All right, and here's my bread on the pizza peel, and we're gonna move it over to the oven. All right, so you can see the cornmeal lets it slide in. Now I'm gonna take my just hot water, dump it into the big mess, but it also creates steam. And now it's gonna bake for an hour. Okay, so a good 10 hours after we started, my bread is done now. So at the end, the last 10 minutes, I left the door open. And that is looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and take it out. Let's see how we do. Using my handy pizza peel. That's not working, so give me a second here. My little design almost looks like a design this time. All right, so you can see, nice and fluffy. I've definitely had larger loaves come out before with better rise, but this is still quite nice. Lovely color. And I'm very happy with this. So I'm just gonna move it to the the wire cooling rack, and then I'm gonna go to sleep because it is now, and that's unacceptable.